Thank you. Hello, everybody. Dawn or anybody, can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
This is Kathy. I can hear you.
Sort of. The sound is all muffled still.
Oh, I see Gerardo. I see Sam. Hi, Sam. And I think I see Kit in red.
Yeah.
Hi, Kit.
My video is not working. I'll be right back.
That's not good.
It's nice to see lots of people coming into the live meeting. That's great.
Dawn, can you see my screen?
We see it too.
Okay, thanks, because I can't see any of the incoming video for some reason. Don, just let me know when you want me to get started because I can't see any of the video, incoming video.
Did we lose Dawn?
She's not on the participants list.
Nope. No bark.
I spoke there. Can anyone hear me?
Welcome back. We missed you.
Oh, good. Okay, wonderful. Yeah, something happened to my internet. And I'm not sure what. I can't get it back through my our internet went down and I couldn't even get phone internet for a few minutes. And it looks like we lost Tracy too. So I'm wondering if there's a large disruptor.
Kit got a message from Tracy that she's rebooting her computer.
Great.
Yeah, she was on earlier, just like I was. So I wonder if, I don't know if she's on Verizon. Maybe there's some big, well, of course, it's not Verizon. There's some. Well, we're waiting for question, folks. How are you?
Dawn, you're cutting in and out. Dawn, can you hear me? You're cutting in and out.
Okay. All right. I will try and talk then. I think there must be a major internet disruption somewhere. Is the audio quality any better now? Did the audio come back? Or am I still breaking up?
Kid, it's Tracy. Can you hear me all right?
Yay, Tracy.
Yay, I can hear you.
Yay. You want me to just get this thing started before it crashes again?
Yes, definitely. Go ahead.
All right. Sorry about that. I'm going to open that up.
My internet is bad. Do you think there's a major outage?
Oh, you're kind of funky again, Dawn.
No, don't tell me. Not again still.
All right. Can everybody hear me?
Yeah, Tracy, can hear
All
you.
right.
See your slide.
Amazing. All right. Let's get started with the art of beekeeping, because if there ever were a time to talk about the art of beekeeping, it's during the blackberry flow. So space management is super important during the blackberry flow because you need to stay ahead of the space needs. Thus the art of beekeeping. And if anybody's been reading the blogs this year, or been talking to those people that go out and catch swarms, bees are super swarmy this year. And so what we want to do during the blackberry flow is create enough space for the queen to lay eggs and for them to store all that wet nectar that they're going to dehydrate down into honey. So thinking about brood area first. So considerations for those of you who are new, you're definitely going to want to have room for the queen to lay lots of eggs. And so how much room is that? So you'll need 3 mediums or 2 deeps to accomplish that. And sometimes you'll need even more space than that, but that's for another time. So make sure that you have drawn comb, because the bees don't consider it space unless the comb is drawn. That's why hopefully you've been feeding 1-to-1 syrup if you had a new colony and they're busily drawing wax because the blackberries are just starting to bloom, but the nectar is not flowing yet. So if you need to, and you can create space, and you've got other colonies, sometimes queens will overlay that space. If you have a smaller colony, what you can do is you can pull a frame of capped brood out, and then you can move that over into your other colony with all of the adhering nurse bees. Now, the queen isn't normally on that capped brood, but every once in a while she's in transit. So you want to make sure that you're not transferring your queen over into another colony, but just the adhering nurse bees and that capped brood. That'll give them space, and then it'll give the other colony a boost. All right, so do I add another box? So here's an example of a little nuke box and then a 10-frame box. So you want to have the bees covering, but not super overcrowded, because it's when they get overcrowded that they decide that there's not enough room here and we need to swarm. So that top box on the left, obviously the bees aren't covering all of those frames, but on the right, the answer would be yes, you definitely want to add another box. Same as on the left. There's not very many bees in that box. There's only about 3 frames. But on the right-hand side, you see the bees are covering 70 to 80% of the space. So that's when you want to add that extra box. And since there happens to be a bit of a piece of pollen patty in this picture, I'm just going to put a plug in for adding a pollen patty right now if you have them, because with all the intermittent rain, what I discovered this weekend in my colonies, and Kathy found the same thing, and Dawn as well, is that they're short on food, not only on nectar, but they're short on pollen too. So adding a pollen patty right now will get them through the next week or 2 of rain, so that they can continue to build up their colony size. If they don't have protein and they have a lot of brood, what they do is they cannibalize brood to feed the others, and then your colony doesn't keep increasing in size. Rather, they cannibalize that, and your colony may stay at a steady size instead of growing to that big size that you want for the nectar flow. So one quick way to look for swarm cells, because the swarming, like I said earlier, is going gangbusters. And so you want to look in between your boxes, those swarm cells. If you have 2 deeps, really all you need to do is crack the back of the deep on top and tip it forward a little bit. And then you'll see in this picture, there's mango nut. There's a bunch of swarm cells started. Those already have queen larvae in there. And so those bees are going to swarm. So we're not going to talk about swarm management today, but you would definitely want to do something like split the queen out into a nuke so that they don't swarm on you. And then you just gently tip the box back down. Now, if you have 2 deeps, you only have to look in between the 2 boxes. But if you're running 3 mediums for your brood area, you need to look in between both. The swarm cells will usually be in between the top box and the middle box, but sometimes they'll be in between the middle box and the bottom box as well. And then honey storage area. This is where it's super important to have extra space, because the wet nectar obviously has more volume than the dried out honey. So they need more space when the blackberries are blooming than you might imagine. So you want to have extra space, and it's warm enough. You don't have to worry about them being able to keep the brood warm underneath that. And this is where you'll read about checkerboarding. And I used the old frames and brand new frames in this picture to make sure and illustrate what a checkerboard looks like. And if you think about a three-dimensional checkerboard, the next box up would have the checkerboarded empty frames in the odd position. So 1, 3, 5, 7, and 9, which is opposite of what this box is. Bees really don't like that. And they like to have their house in order before they swarm. So this slows down the swarming urge, and they draw nice wax in between those drawn frames. So if you are worried about your bees swarming, checkerboarding it with your supers works great. All right, and a word on feeding. So right now you should be feeding, especially if you have new bees, because it's a dearth right now and there's not enough syrup. So not only pollen patties, but syrup. I think I used 75 pounds of sugar over the weekend to get all my colonies fed. So that 1-to-1 syrup is great for drawing comb. So if you don't have all your comb drawn yet, feeding them 1-to-1 syrup, as long as they'll take it, is a great idea. They tend not to take the syrup during the blackberry flow anyway. But if you have your honey supers on and the blackberries are still blooming and you're not selling your honey and you need more drawn comb, go ahead and leave the syrup on. It doesn't hurt anything. And then if you are selling your honey or your comb is already drawn, then there's no reason to have feeders on. And if you're selling your honey, you definitely should not have your feeders on while they're making honey. All right, and then a word on queen excluders. If you're new to beekeeping, I highly recommend you just forego the queen excluders until you get a little bit more experience, because it makes it much more complicated managing the space. Remember I mentioned that some queens will overlay those 2 deeps or 3 mediums. And if you have a queen excluder on and you don't pull out the extra capped brood to make space, then what happens is they prepare to swarm and then leave. But if you have your supers on and you do not have a queen excluder, then that queen has the freedom to go ahead and move up and lay into the honey supers. And then as she slows down her laying pattern over the summer, then they'll backfill that brood area with honey. And then you won't have brood up where you want to harvest honey from later anyway. So that's a great way to get around those double space considerations, is not to use the queen excluder. Now, if you are using a queen excluder, my preference is the ones that are a little bit more expensive. They're the metal ones, and the holes open the same direction as the frames. So it's easier for the bees to transit in between. It doesn't slow them down too much. If you're using the cheap plastic ones, those go perpendicular to the frames, and it makes the holes a lot smaller and harder for the bees to get through. So you will have a traffic jam under there, and the consequence is you'll end up with less honey because it takes them longer to transit through to deposit that. So you want the workers, the foragers, to make as many trips as possible during the day, and you don't want the queen excluders to slow them down. All right, and as things ramp up on colony size, so do varroa mites. So I've got a slide here on monitoring for varroa. So you should be at a place now where you have enough population of bees to go ahead and check your mite levels. And so the key number is 2%. Anything above 2% is bad and you want to treat. And I'm not going to have time today to talk about different treatments, but pick the right treatment for the time of year and whether or not you have your honey supers on. Some are rated for use with your supers on, but most are not. So you need to be really careful that you don't mess up your honey harvest by accidentally using the wrong mite treatment while your supers are on. So you notice those little bees in the middle, they're doomed. The little bee on the bottom that group has deformed wing virus and a mite, and then the bee on the top has a mite. And so if you see mites in your colony, your bees are pretty much toast. In fact, Kathy and I took bets on how long this colony was going to take before it died. And I think it lasted like 2 weeks before it totally crashed. So usually the mites ride on the underside. So you almost never see mites on your bees. So don't think about looking for bees. We hear a lot, hey, I didn't see any mites, therefore I don't have any. You almost never see colonies with this many mites that they're riding on the tops of the bees. So, and 2% is a pretty low number too, with the thousands of bees you have in there. So my favorite way to check for mites is to use this Varroa Easy Check. And it's available commercially on Amazon and all the beekeeping websites. I've got the link on this page to the Vito Pharma website, and they have a way to, they have a video on an alcohol wash, which I recommend. You do sacrifice 300 bees, but it's the good of the many outweigh the needs of the few. So that's definitely the best way to go, in my humble opinion. If you're dead set on using sugar shake, you can also use this device for a sugar shake, and the instructions for both are on Vito Pharma's website. So check out those videos there. Some people have asked me in the past, what if I just want to use a sticky board count? It's not very accurate, but here's the guide for doing a 24-hour sticky board count, whether you have 8 frames of bees or more, or 7 frames of bees or less. There's the numbers to treat if you have more than 40 or more than 20 mites on your sticky board after 24 hours. And with that, I will stop sharing. And, oh, sure, I'll stop sharing. I hid the share, so. Dawn, I don't know if we have any time for questions.
I don't know that Dawn is still with us.
Oh, I guess not. All right, so Dawn's not here. What questions do you guys have?
Go ahead.
Right? I've been using oxalic acid in a spoon that I put in plugging the sauce pot. We started fire playing. That's never happened before. But anyways, my question is oxalic acid. Is that pretty common for people to use that for treating for once?
Oh, you're going to get me on my soapbox early. So oxalic acid vaporization is not very effective when there are capped brood. If the brood is capped, the recommendation, I think, is to use oxalic acid vape every 3 days. And if you think about it, if you have to use something every 3 days, it's not really working very well. So I do highly recommend oxalic acid vaporization if you have no capped brood. It works very well. If you, and by the way, oxalic acid drip also works really well if you have no capped brood, and is a great treatment for swarms. I usually wait until they've got brood going after 4 or 5 days so they don't swarm on me again, and then hit them with an oxalic acid drip. Then there's a lot of people that are using Randy Oliver's unapproved shop towel method. All of those instructions are available on his scientific beekeeping website. I highly recommend that everybody take a look at that because those methods are really effective at the right times. We have a shy group. Any more questions?
Can you see the chat? There's a question in the text in the chat.
Can you read it to me?
It says, when should I put my first honey super on? It seems that it's been pretty cold unless it starts warming up soon. I am thinking it's going to be a short season. Anyone have any thoughts on that?
So if your honey super's not got drawn comb on it, now's a good time to add that. If you have all of the brood frames that you need, and they have, they're covering 70 to 80% of those frames. If they're not covering 70 to 80% of those frames, then I would wait until that happens, regardless of when the blackberries start blooming, because they don't have enough, they don't have enough bees to fill your brood chamber yet. So make sure they have enough bees to fill your brood chamber and then add another box. I don't know Kathy, what do you think?
Again, I kind of go by, 70% on the box below, then it's time to add. But I think when you are going into the honey flow of blackberries, maybe 5, because then they just start packing it in, and they really need the space, because nectar, it takes so much more space than honey until they get it reduced. So
and thanks. And by the way, I'm going to pile on there that I also check for swarm cells once a week during the blackberry flow.
Yeah. Tracy, I also would like to just say that when I put the queen excluder on, the bottom has got a nice entrance, which is great, but I always like to make sure that I've got a second entrance up top. And if you have a notched inner cover, that works very well. If not, you can buy a shim from Dadant or Man Lake and put that underneath the inner cover. And it's really nice, because the bees that are coming back just loaded down with all that nectar don't have to climb all the way through the brood boxes and through the queen excluder to get up to the honey supers, and you wind up getting a lot more honey with the upper entrance.
I didn't mention that on slide 2 here. Let me share my I'll share my slides again. I put an upper entrance every couple of supers.
Yeah.
So if you see this box, you can see where all those bees are. If you look close, there's a queen excluder right there. And above the queen excluder, I have a emery shim that Kathy mentioned, and the bees are going in and out of there. And then 2 supers above that, I have another one so that they can go in and out of there. That way they don't have to fight their way through all the brood area. And I usually mention that, but I forgot. Thanks, Kathy.
You're
You just
welcome.
deal with all the comb.
I didn't understand that. I'm sorry.
You just deal with all the comb that they build in between.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And I don't know why, but when I put the emery shim with the entrance facing up like a U, they draw less comb in it. Don't ask me why. It's been a mystery and I haven't figured it out yet. So what I do is I take a Tupperware out with me, and then I blow all the bees off. And then if there's comb with honey in there, I just scrape the comb with honey and dunk it into my Tupperware, and then put a lid on it really fast so that I don't end up with a ton of bees in it. Then I have chunk honey to put on toast and stuff.
Have you ever experimented with holes in supers? Extra holes in the box themselves?
Yeah, no, I don't want to drill holes in my super. And if you decide that you want to drill holes in yours, just make sure not to put them by the handles. I've seen lots of pictures of them by the handles.
What time of year was that stack of 17 boxes?
It was during the honey flow. I combined 2 colonies, and there was a really, really prolific queen in there. So it was, you know, like late June when that stack of 32 boxes was in there. I had to build a bench in the back too, because I couldn't reach to get the supers on the top.
Need a ladder.
Yeah. I built myself a bench for back there and I just stood on it.
I have a question. How do I think about space? So space needs, you mentioned that it's drawn out comb that we count when we're thinking about how much space the colony has. So I have a new nuke. I put on the second box because the bottom 7 or 8 frames were filled out. So the top box, there's only a couple frames with any drawn out comb on. Is there like, would they potentially say, oh, I'm out of room because these frames are not drawn out? Like, how do I think about that?
Yeah, they could. So what I would do on that is I would take, if you have 2 frames of capped brood, I would move those up to the top box and push all the rest of the brood in the bottom into the middle. And that way you have an elongated brood area. And that way the larva, the capped brood will emerge, and then those will become wax layer, wax producers in 2 weeks. So they'll be in the right place. And so, and you'll get more traffic in that upper box if there's brood up there. And then too, when you have those frames on the outside, they don't usually draw the wax very well next to the wood. So just take those frames and flip them around the other way once they're drawn on the inside. Pick them out, turn them around, and so that the undrawn side is on the inside, and then they'll draw that wax out too.
Okay, thanks. And then don't, like you mentioned earlier, don't put the super on until that second box is 70% drawn out. Okay.
Exactly.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hey, I have a couple of questions. 1 second, I'm gonna have to type.
I'll get back in the chat.
Yeah. Somebody was asking about where to get, they said an Avery shim, but it's called an Emery shim. Mr. Emery died 20 years or so ago. And you can just look for a shim. Dayton has them, Man Lake Bees has them. And they're really easy to make also if you're all at all inclined for that.
Okay, my baby stopped throwing a fit. So I'm a fairly new beekeeper, just started this year, and I had 2 hives. Unfortunately, one has almost completely collapsed due to pesticides, and the other has fairly low numbers, but is still high energy, still going out. So I think they'll bounce back fairly well. Both queens have survived. So do you have any recommendations on how best to help them both, and will the one with like dangerously low numbers have a chance of bouncing back, or
define dangerously low?
Yeah,
like 24 bees total?
Oh, combine them.
Combine them, like kill the second queen and just combine them both.
And if you don't want to kill the queen, the easiest way to do a combination is with newspaper. And you choose the queen that you want. She's always on the bottom. And you put a piece of newspaper on the top of that hive. And then you put the other hive on top of the newspaper. And it'll take a little while for the bees to start chewing through the newspaper. And then the pheromones from the queen down below, they rise with the heat. And the queen up above goes, oh my God, there's another queen. I've got to go kill her. And she goes down into the big hive and with the queen you want, and the bees wind up balling her, suffocating her, and you don't have to kill her.
And honestly, if there's literally only 24 bees, I would probably just shake them out in the front.
Shake them in. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because one hive definitely has about like 100.
You can also ask around and see if there's anyone who needs a queen. If the queen's fine, there's no reason to kill her. Someone probably wants her.
Yep.
You could.
That's an option too.
There.
Okay,
have-
I guess like a follow-up to that would be, because both my hives are like, one is the super dangerously low and the other one doesn't have amazing numbers, but it is doing a lot better. Would putting a like capped brood frame in there help? Like, I don't have a strong hive to take from, so this would be like, do you know where I can get one? Kind of question to help boost their population and just help them get started, because they kind of got attacked by pesticides only a week and a half into being trying to get established.
So,
And how do
I
you
mean,
know they
it
got
might have-
attacked by pesticides?
Well, all the bees that are dead have their tongues out, and we had
Okay.
a pesticide salesman walk around door to door the
Oh my God,
same
yes.
day. Yeah, so pretty confident it's pesticides.
Yeah,
wow.
you got it. Just want to make sure. Lots of new beekeepers don't know about looking for the tongue out, so good for you.
Yeah, and a lot of people right now are posting on the Facebook pages that their bees got whacked by pesticides, and they're showing pictures of starving bees. So
How
For us,
many?
I think it was a combination, because like there were just enough that died from pesticides, and then there were just too many bodies that they couldn't push out, and then they starved. But there are like, like a handful, like a literal handful.
How many
left in one.
bees? How many frames of bees in your good hive?
There's probably about 1.5 to 2. Like, it is still really low, but
Oh.
they're really active though. Like, and they're eating the syrup we're giving them. We put pollen patties on it today as
Good.
well to just really boost them and try to help. But they seem to be okay. Like, and they don't have like a literal massive pile of dead bodies at the bottom of their hive. But it's
Yeah.
not
That's why I
amazing.
wouldn't shake the bees into that hive, because you're going to be shaking the other queen in there, and you just never know.
Yeah.
You could lose both queens by
I was
accident.
saying I would
so-
shake them outside. I'd kill the queen or give the queen away, like Peter said. That's an even better idea. And then I'd just shake the other bees outside and make them beg for admittance.
Yeah, if you
Okay.
don't know who to give a queen to, you can bring her to me. I'll raise her.
All right, I'm not super experienced with trapping her and figuring that out, but I will do my best.
All right.
Peter, do you know anybody that's selling single frames of capped brood right now?
Sorry, what was that, Tracy?
Do you know anybody that's selling single frames or capped brood by the frame right now?
They might be able to do a couple, I mean, make a bunch of splits in the next couple of weeks, so this isn't an ideal moment for me. I don't, off the top of my head, I don't know anyone else. But as far as trapping the queen and moving the queen, she's on that frame, just, whoever wants her, tell them to bring a new box with them. Just put the frame with the queen and a couple dozen bees into the new box, and that can transfer her like that.
Yeah,
They
I would
might
just
still
bring a,
have other page to introduce her, but that's their problem.
I would just bring a queen cage and cage her.
Yeah, if they can do that, but
Yeah.
Teresa said that she's not comfortable caging the queen herself.
It's really hard to hear you guys in the room. Can you get closer to a microphone? You got good tips. We want to hear them.
I'll look forward to join the discussion.
We have 20 minutes before our speaker begins, and Dawn had some business she wanted to cover. So
You want to do that?
maybe one more question, if there is one.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Is there any other methods for possible laying worker hive other than just dumping the hive on the ground?
Not really.
I can talk to him about methods during the break.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so Dawn shares that Starlink went down for most of Western Washington.
Right.
Okay, so there's a lot of, I'm gonna do my best here. Kathy, do you want to take this or do you want me to do this?
As long as we can hear you, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, no, I can hear you fine.
No, you need to be close to the microphone.
Great voice. Can you hear me? You
I
guys
can.
want, I'm asking if they can hear me.
I can hear you.
me? Okay, so There's a lot of information about volunteering in events. We had 2 really successful events. Nancy's the event queen. And we had really great volunteers and everything went beautifully. And Dawn really wanted to share a note that one of the volunteers sent her. And I'm going to just read it. On Saturday, I had the pleasure and opportunity to volunteer for the West Seattle Bee Festival. The event was wonderful. First time I ever volunteered for PSBA. I thoroughly enjoyed every moment of bee, honey, and flower conversation. Kit brought a frame of bees and an enclosed observation display. Children loved the hands-on event. I was able to take photos and thought would like to see them. So the the next event we have is in August. It's on the 17th at Merrimore Park. There may be another event that comes up. It's really fun, and talking bees is my favorite thing to do, so it's not a big deal. But being involved, that's a great way to participate in PSBA if you have time and inclination. We can always use more people, and maybe we'll get into more events too as the pandemic becomes more of a passive thing instead of a recent memory. Once the end of that picture, sorry, it was switch. Then the apiary days are, would you like to speak about the apiary? Anybody else that's working on the apiary? Do you want to do you want to take this note? You haven't seen it. Well, Dawn's read, and then when you come closer to the mic. The apiary is booming, and we are grateful to Kathleen and Bilbis for managing it for us. Twice a month on a weekend, come join us for hands-on beekeeping. The live experience is invaluable for learning, and the classes are a lot of fun. We have a calendar for the year and a monthly newsletter, and it's also online on the PugetSoundBees.org. Currently, we have 9 hives that are building up strong. There are a lot of bees to learn with. That's the story this year. So there's an apiary day listed on June 9 and 22, July 6 and 20, and August 3rd. We're still looking for experienced club members to help out at the apiary. We need someone to help out a couple times a month, checking hives. So you want to speak to that a little bit?
Sure. So because we have so many hives, when we do our apiary days, can only get through best case 3. And then I'm coming over with Anne and Pauline midweek, and we're also getting through a number of hives, but we're not getting through all 9 hives as regularly as we should be. We can 2 swarm, but they stayed local, so we got them both back, which is good. But we could use help even doing a couple of hives midweek or on the weekend when we don't have the apiary work parties would be super helpful.
So that there's a binder in the shed, right? And so there's a running historical document, if you will. So you can note what you see that the next person picks up and says, oh wow, like that, this is the next thing. So anyway, anybody you want them to contact you, right?
Yes,
Kathleen?
yeah.
And what's your email address for that?
It's the one listed on the webpage.
For the apiary?
Yes.
Okay, so it's apiary manager at PugetSoundBees.org or something.
Yeah, something like that. Got it.
And that goes straight to you, and then you'll get back in touch.
Correct.
So yeah, Kathleen's been reaching out, so this is the first time you can really ask the whole populace. Okay, anything else in business that we should be, well, I covered Dawn's list, and we still have suggestions. Our speaker tonight is Sagili Ramesh, and he's going to speak about varroa control. And he's, is he on the chat?
You have 10 minutes to talk.
Yeah, but I just wondering if he's saying something all right. Oh, good. Okay. So, Kathy, do you want to run a chat for a few minutes?
Sure. for anybody who has any questions, just raise your hand or start talking and we'll get them answered for you.
You wanna separate? Instead of doing as you've been doing? For like this little, for 10 minutes, okay. Well, you join. Kathy, we're gonna go separate from the online and do a
Okay.
chat here.
All right, you'll handle there and I'll handle here.
So
Okay.
in 10 minutes, come back. So we're
All right. We can do that. Okay, so for anybody who's just on Zoom, Tracy and I are here, and this is a great time to answer questions that you have. And no question is silly. We're not going to laugh at you. We're going to help you. So ask away.
I only laugh at Kathy and she only laughs at me.
So,
And then we usually laugh at each other.
That's
so
right.
I had a interesting situation about 3 or 4 weeks ago. A neighbor of mine who knows that I keep bees called me, and she was worried that a swarm was attaching to the outside of her house. Well, it
Mhm.
wasn't a swarm. There was maybe 300 bees, and they'd found a way into her house. They were definitely honeybees, but there was not like swarming behavior or a queen or anything like
You
that.
may have missed it.
They're
Okay.
probably in. You just saw the
Probably
last
already
of
in
them.
the house. Yeah.
What's that?
They were probably swarming when you weren't around and she wasn't around. When she noticed it, it was just when there were still a few beads bearded outside waiting to get in.
They weren't.
Bees
They
were
weren't
probably
beaded.
already in the wall.
They weren't really beaded. They were just kind of. They were just kind of flying around, and some had found a way in through her chimney. She had a
Okay,
chimney
well,
that goes out the side. Yeah.
undoubtedly that was a swarm that moved in
Okay.
there. And I know there's a couple people on the swarm list that will remove bees. So take a look at that and then refer her.
I should probably go and see if there's any bee activity there.
Easy to just ask for a photo so that you don't have to drive and waste your gas.
She's in walking distance of my house.
Oh, well then go for it.
Yeah.
Go see bees.
Yeah. I'll double check with her and see if she's
Yeah, I
had any more activity.
just cut out on a 3rd story balcony bees that had swarmed, and they sent me a picture and they said, I don't know what's going on. There are a few bees here. And I told them I think that the bees swarmed and they're in the wall, and these are just the ones that are out foraging and waiting to get back in, because it's not a big opening, it's a little opening, and so they tend to be there. And then if they've been there any length of time, you'll get orientation going on outside where the bees will back up off the wall and just be in front of it, memorizing that hole so that they know
Okay.
when they go out where to come back to. And it turned out that when I got the wall all opened up, all the bottom comb was probably at a max 7 or 8 days that it had been there, and the queen had laid, and there was some cap brood. And then I thought that I had it open enough, but I had to go up another 12 inches, and that was all dark comb. So bees had been there before.
Oh,
And
interesting.
they filled that part with honey and pollen. So just like they would in
A big
in a
problem.
normal hive, they'd have an arch of honey and then an arch of pollen, and then
Yeah.
there's all the nest below that. So yeah, I would just refer it. It's nothing that you're going to want to get into. It's difficult.
Well, I mean, I'll go back and see if I can see any sign of bees coming and going.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully if it was a swarm that landed on the side of her house and didn't actually make it in, and then by the time you guys looked again, they had moved on and they're
Moved on.
somewhere else.
Yeah, that's what I'm guessing.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
Possibility. Yeah.
He hasn't contacted me again, but I'll double check with her.
That's
You
nice.
know, and the swarm may or may not have issued from your hives as well. I've picked up 5 swarms from one tree on Mercer Island so far this summer, and there's a beekeeper right next door, and she has 1 colony. And there were at one point 3 swarms hanging in that tree right next door, which obviously didn't all come from her box, if any of them. So it could have been a swarm from your colony. It might not have been.
Yeah. I
No
kind
one
of
has
doubt it was
any
from my
questions
colony.
tonight? You guys are super quiet. What's the deal?
I kind of doubt that swarm was from my colony because I think I didn't put mine in till the end of April. So this would have been, 3 weeks after I put it in or something like that.
Oh, sometimes they
How-
do.
How often are you checking your hive?
Mine every
Mhm.
week, every week.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, every 7 to 9 days is really the way to go. And if you don't have the time, at least tipping the second box up and looking for the peanut shaped cells is a good way to keep an eye on things. I know, a lot of times we just have nasty rainy weather and it's not worth opening the hive, but to take a quick peek like that, will ease your mind.
Yeah.
I have a couple questions.
Great.
Yeah, Patty.
So as you guys know, I have mediums and I have had the medium for 2 weeks, I think, or the nuke. I put on another box. There's no drawn comb yet, so I sprayed sugar water.
Good.
So I did that, but Tracy, I want to make sure I understood what you were saying. If nothing is happening like in another few days, are you saying I should take capped brood frames from the bottom and switch it to the top?
Yep.
Yeah, okay. And then
It's
the
called
empty
dating the
ones,
box.
2.
two? Okay.
That way they keep each other warm.
Okay, and then the empty ones, I just put on the ends or just put those right back where I took the cap frames.
No, you move all the brood to the middle, and
Okay.
the empty ones go on the outside.
Okay.
Or next to it, right?
Right. Okay, so I'll try that if they haven't made any progress. And then my other question is, when I did an inspection yesterday, well, I was so excited because I saw the queen. So that was really fun. That little green dot, I just was jumping for joy. So that was fun. But I did see this, it made me worry a little bit. It was like a little kind of a fluffy cotton ball thing. And I'm like, uh-oh, what is that? Does that ring a bell? It was probably this, maybe the size of a thumbnail. And
Are you sure it wasn't some of the
Cottonwood?
tree?
maybe, oh, I hope it was. I'm like, oh no, is this like a moth or
It's
something?
everywhere right now.
Okay, maybe it was hot. Maybe that just flew in there when I
Yeah.
opened it. Okay, good. I hope so.
The other option is if it's in an area where the bees aren't trafficking highly, it could be a wax moth larvae.
Oh, that's what
But they're not fluffy.
they're not fluffy.
No.
Okay, yeah.
No,
I've had
and-
them pick up crap around them to make them look fluffy, but yeah.
Okay, if you are worried about wax moth, a nice strong hive is going to take care of it. But you can help the bees out, and the easiest way is to be a detective and look on your sticky board. And wax moth poop is little black rectangles, and they're all in a pile in one area. And if you see it, what looks like in the debris that's three rows over, then you just go up there and go, up on the frame above it and look for it. Wax moth go diagonally through your comb.
Interesting.
So you can see an actual kind of fuzzy, I wouldn't say fluffy, but I'd say it's kind of fuzzy, fluffy, gooey, and there's usually some feces in there, and you won't really see the eggs, but they're in there also. And I just take my hive tool and I just kind of down that diagonal so I don't destroy too much wax. And
all right, just in case. Hopefully it's just a cotton wood.
Hopefully it's just cottonwood.
Yeah.
That's the first thing I thought of.
It sounds lovely. I can't wait to look for that square feces. Okay, great. Okay, thanks, guys.
Sure. That was it? You said you had 2 questions.
Yeah, well, that
was 2 questions.
Yeah. All right. I can probably think of more, but I'll mute myself for now. Thank you.
So I have an interesting anecdote. So I've been beekeeping this is my 5th year now, and I've been pretty faithfully following Tracy's advice of top entries every few frames or every few boxes. This is the first year that I've done it where there's only a bottom entrance and queen excluder just above the brood box. The interesting thing I've seen as a result of this, I don't think it hurt the maple flow at all because I was drowning in maple. But the interesting thing that's come out of it is the brood box itself is almost completely dry. They've stored all of their nectar above, and it's cut down on the number of drone cells they're producing as a result.
Interesting.
If you've got your frame and at the top, if it's all honey all the way across the box, the queen can't go through that and up into the next box.
Yeah.
So, you know, that can stop your wax getting drawn out and the queen from going up above and laying. So just watch for that.
Yep.
Thanks for
Yeah,
sharing
I have so much drawn wax that I didn't need them drawing anymore for that. I
Oh,
wanted them
great.
drawing
Yeah,
it
of
in the
course.
brood.
5 years, you better. You better.
Unless you have rats like I do, and then they eat it.
She's feeding the rats.
Peanut butter.
Yep. Marshmallow and peanut butter here. Come on. More questions. Come on, guys.
I got a hopefully really easy one. You mentioned earlier the oxalic acid strips. What time of the year is the right time to apply those?
No.
Okay.
I've had mine on since March.
Okay, and they're like a leave on for 2 months type of
Yeah,
treatment.
I think Randy leaves his on for 2 or 3 months. I can't remember.
Okay. And another random one. Sorry, this is probably going to be a question that will be difficult because I can't describe what I saw, but I had queen die, and the new queen should have hatched a few days ago. When it was warm over the weekend, it was a Monday, it was warm. There was a period of time in the middle of the day where it almost looked like the bees were going to swarm. There's just an abundance of activity outside and around the hive. Have you noticed, does that coincide with like a queen bee taking her, would that be an indication that the new queen had taken her mating flight and the bees were anxious not having the queen there? Or is that not necessarily the case? And
Well, sometimes that happens. They'll go out with a new queen or with a virgin queen. And, you know, they go out and they go up a little bit and it's like, oh, she's out there. We better go back. You know, and the other thing, it could be orientation flights that you're seeing.
All right, so the in-person group is back online. I think we're ready to get going with the main speaker.
Kit, you want to introduce? Did we lose Kit?
No, I'm here. Can you hear me?
We can now.
Barely.
Brian had you muted.
Okay, so this is Sahili Ramesh. Will you please take it away? I'm sorry I don't know much more about you, but I'm thrilled that you're here. So please teach us about my order.
And you're from Oregon State University?
Yeah, I can introduce myself. No worries. Can you all hear me? Can you all hear me well?
Wonderful.
Even the audience there in person, can you hear me well? Perfect. Okay, yeah, let me know. And I have a nice English accent, so that will keep you awake. So let me share my screen and let me know if you can see the screen, and then I'll talk. Are you all able to see the full screen?
We can see it, and as a Oregon State alum, go Beavs.
Okay, go Beavs. Yeah, I have one supporter at least. Yeah, cool. So a little bit about me, and then I'll go into. So I don't know how much time I have. I am notorious. I can keep you until midnight here, but I'll not do that. Can I take about 50 minutes and 10 minutes for questions, or you want me to go for an hour and then questions?
with.
Can you say that, Kathy, again? I can't hear you.
Well, I said, what food you're comfortable with. If you go over a certain amount of material that you think is enough, that we'll have some questions.
Okay.
We can take a break and do that. And if not,
Okay, yeah. Yeah, great. So I'll stop in between topics and see if you have questions. And yeah, I'll try to respect your time. I know it's late, so and you have to go back to work for those who are working. So let's do that. Yeah. So a little bit about me. So I obtained my PhD in entomology, focusing on honeybee health and nutrition and pollination from Texas A&M University in College Station, Texas. And then I was offered an assistant professor position here at Oregon State University around 2009. And so I've been at Oregon State University for about 15 years. So my lab focuses on 3 prime areas: honeybee health. Honeybee health is very broad. So we look into everything from varroa mites to nosema and viruses as well. And then honeybee nutrition is a very fascinating area that we started working on about 6 or 7 years now. And there are only few labs in the country that are focusing on honeybee nutrition, which is really critical. I know the topic I have been asked to speak is about varroa today, but maybe in the future, if you're interested, I can give a presentation on honeybee nutrition if that is interesting for many of you in the audience. So these are a few areas, and we work very closely with our commercial and hobby beekeepers because, again, we are not just sitting here in the lab and coming up with some projects. We really work closely, and right now we have a big study on European foul brood, especially for beekeepers that pollinate blueberries, at least for 6-7 years. You probably heard in Washington as well. EFB, European foul brood disease, has become a serious disease for commercial operations. Maybe some of you see in your hives as backyard beekeepers on and off, but it is persisting in commercial beekeepers. So we obtained a large grant from USDA last year. So we have been sampling hives starting from almonds to whatever the last crop here in Oregon. And so Washington State University is also a partner. So I work with Brandon Hopkins and others at WSU Pullman. We have a collaboration with UC Davis, Elena Nino, and then Mississippi State is another. So it's a huge collaboration. OSU is leading the effort, but we have partners looking into that problem. So yeah, we run a large program here. If you have questions, if you're on I-5, and so we are only off like 10 miles off I-5. If you are going down to Eugene area or somewhere in Oregon, then please visit us as well and to see our program. Okay. I understand that many of you are new beekeepers in the audience as well. I know I caught last 10 minutes of the discussion you guys had. So looks like a lot of expertise in the group, a lot of veterans that really know what they're doing. But I'll keep it more basic, assuming that half of you are new to beekeeping. At least you started bees last year or a year before. But I apologize if for those who have a lot of experience, if some of this may sound a little basic to you. But I know I always enjoy talking about the same topics several times, so it gets into our DNA more about honeybee biology and varroa biology as well. Okay, I will start the topic now. So what I'll do, so before I start, as always, I acknowledge all these wonderful people that have helped me run the lab here. So yeah, I lead the lab, but that doesn't mean that I do everything that I'm going to show or I have been doing for the last 15 years. So here you'll see some graduate students, some postdocs, some technicians that help us in the lab. So without all these people, no program is possible, not just me, across the nation. Each lab has a lot of wonderful people that help. Okay, this is what I'll do. I'll talk about varroa biology a little bit for the new beekeepers, so that, it's interesting, right? We talk about honeybee biology. It's so fascinating and you need years to learn. But varroa biology is really important as well, because that's a pest that has really hindered our beekeeping for the last 30 plus years since it was introduced around 1987. So we need to understand the biology as well so that we can effectively control varroa as well. That's the reason why we talk a little bit about varroa biology. Then I'll go into a few treatments, not very deeply, but if you have any questions, I can answer at that time. And then a few potential strategies for varroa control. Nothing rocket science you'll see, but I'll try to make you think a little bit about the strategies you use for varroa control. And then we have been doing few, or at least we have conducted 3 or 4 studies in the last 3 or 4 years on oxalic acid vaporization, because I know this is one product that has been really popular with the backyard beekeepers and even commercial beekeepers now for the last few years. So we'll talk about those as well. I know some of you probably, I heard in the last 10 minutes, you have used the strips. Maybe you use whatever Randy Oliver or others have formulated some of those. Maybe you're making your own. Of course, the formal registered product for that formulation is not available yet. So I'll talk about a product that is gonna come soon as well. Okay, for the new beekeepers, this is what I say. These are the 2 important ones on the bottom that I have shown here. Without having a good nutrition and controlling your varroa mites, your colony survival is at stake, right? So again, I don't have good numbers on this, but I always try to emphasize by saying there is a 90% chance your colony will survive if you have taken care of the mites and also managed the nutrition. Again, I'm not talking about nutrition today, but that's another really important topic as well. Okay, here is a lot of sentences here on this. Don't worry, I have an animation as well to show you for the new beekeepers so that you're not too confused. So for varroa mite life cycle is really important to understand. As I said, that's the major pest or parasite, whatever you want to call it. That has plagued the bee industry here in the United States and across the world for the last 30, 40 years now, at least in the North American continent. So there are 2 phases we talk about: phoretic phase, or sometimes we call it a dispersal phase, and then there is a reproductive phase, right? I'll talk about that in the next slide. So what happens is the female mite, when it's ready to enter a cell, so they will look for larvae that are about 5 days old or about 12 hours before they are capped. So that's the stage they look into, right? If they're trying to get into a 2-day-old or a 3-day-old, the bees will be able to remove them out of the cells because they're still feeding the larvae by inspecting them. So that's one reason why varroa mites have well adapted to honeybee hives is they can perceive the the larval pheromone and see and understand what the age group is of that larva. And they very meticulously get into those cells about 12 hours before the cell is capped. And once they get into the cell, they go all the way down into the cell and they will hide in the larval food that is being provided to the honeybee larva. And then they wait until it's capped. And then once it's capped, they come out of those the larval food and make a small incision, like a hole on the larva. And then they start feeding on the fat bodies and a little bit hemolymph as well. So about 2.5 to 3 days after the mite has gone in, she'll start laying eggs, right? So the first egg is always a male, and then subsequently she will lay about an egg of 30 hours after. So 30 hours next egg, and then the next egg after 30 hours. So those are all will be females. So it's a very interesting dynamics inside that cell, right? So there is an inbreeding going on. The first is a male, and that male mates with all those sisters that are produced later. So that's what I'm saying here. Male and the first female are ready to mate a week after hatching. So that's basically, in a nutshell, a quick biology of the varroa mite. So if you didn't, so here is the phoretic phase. So we all know, many of you probably have seen the mites. They are visible to your naked eye, but they are pretty much hiding between the segments on the abdomen, on the lower side, on the dorsal side of the abdomen. So usually if a new beekeeper, it's hard to find those mites on the bees. But if they are moving in the dispersal phase, if they're trying to get into another cell, onto another bee, or sometimes they may be on the ventral side as well. So you can see them. I hope you are seeing my pointer here. So these are the mites that you're seeing. So this is the phoretic phase, or we call dispersal phase, where mites are moving around. This is the phase that is trickier one, right? The reproductive phase. You see a lot of brood here that is capped. And you don't know, right? If I ask you now to guess how many mites are in those cells, you can't, because you literally can't see, and there is no way you can do anything like your mite wash with the alcohol wash or sugar shake, and those methods. You can't do anything with these reproductive mites that are inside the cells. So I'll talk more about reproductive phase in a study that we did a few years ago. I'll talk about that in a minute. So if you didn't understand anything that I said about varroa mite, so just watch this animation. Hope it's playing well on your side. So that's a hive, right? So that's a bee with a mite. So the mite falls off when it's ready to get into a cell. So that's a cell where she found that appropriate size larva, or the 5-day plus larva, and she hides in the bottom. Now it's been capped, so she's feeding and then starts laying eggs. So the white dots you're seeing, those are the eggs. And now you see some of them have hatched. And now you see those are the mite family that you're seeing. So mites are not insects, so we use different terms like nymphs. They don't have any larval stages, so we call them deutonymphs, protonymphs. And so here is a bee that chews out of the cell when it's ready after 21 days after the egg was laid, right? So now you see there is an offspring that is coming out along with the parent mite. So if it's a worker cell, we expect one offspring to come. If it's a drone cell that the mite went in and reproduced, then you probably will get 2 offsprings along with the parent mite coming up. So here is a question for you. I know I'm not in person there, so I can't gauge or get, well, maybe you can shout some answers, or you can type in the chat or unmute yourself if you really know the answer. So my question is, what percentage of mites are in the capped brood cells? That means reproductive phase. And what percentage of mites are on adult bees, like on the bees literally in the phoretic phase? So I have a few options here. Anyone wants to guess one option that you think is the appropriate one? Hope someone has a check ready for you if you answer the right one. Okay, so no one wants to take a risk, so I will. So keep that answer in your mind, and you'll get an answer after I show you the study and the results. So it could be variable. I mean, if you are guessing 50-50, you may be right, even 80-20. So it depends on the time of the year as well, right? So I'll show you a study that we did in late fall, and based on that, you can guess like what it could be in summer and other times of the year. So this was a study we did probably 7 years ago. So we wanted to look at the varroa population dynamics. So the goal was to estimate the phoretic and the reproductive mites in colonies. So you can see here, this is the Oregon State University, you probably know, it's in a city called Corvallis, which is about hour and a half south of Portland. So here you see we have an OSU property about 25 minutes away from main campus. You see lots of forested area. So this is a grape orchard that you're seeing here. So here we put few hives here. So we didn't want to spread mites to our beekeepers, because basically we are trying to breed for mites in these colonies for this study, right? So you see that's our truck, and there are some students there. And so we chose a very isolated location for the study. So here is the study design. We use 6 colonies for this study. So initially we gave them some APOR, which is a Amitraz product. Probably many of you know and have used this product to control mites in the past. And from March 22nd to September 14th, we did not use any mite control. That means we allowed the bees to naturally progress or grow so that we can see how they're growing. And then we monitored mites through various ways by alcohol wash every month, and then also with sticky boards throughout the summer and part of fall as well. And then on September 14th, 2018, we go in and literally kill all those colonies. Means we are not just putting some cyanide, but we are trying to put all the bees in alcohol. And I'll show you how to do that. It's a little messy process, but so we kill all the kind. No, you can't kill all bees, but probably 95% of the bees can be killed if you are going early in the morning and shaking all those bees into those funnels. And then we collect all the brood frames that are existing. So that's the one that will tell you, right, how many bees are, how many mites are there in the reproductive phase inside the cell. So we take those back to the lab, and then the students will explore, look into each cell and quantify how many mites are there. So here is the funnel that I talked about. So all bees are shaken into this, and they fall back into this alcohol wash or the alcohol tubs. or these buckets full of alcohol, and then they submerge and die. So this is a quick video to show you the messy process. Okay, so this is how the bucket full of dead bees will come back to the lab, and then we will quantify mites on the bees, right? All the phoretic phase bees. And then this is the most tedious part, where you have to go through each cell. So we provided some visors with those magnifying glasses for these undergraduates to look into, and you see the mites on those. So each of those larval stage or pupal stage that they pull out will come up with those mites. So yeah, I mean, so in a year we run like 7 or 8 projects parallelly. So it took at least a couple of years for us to finish all those, because we spend only a few hours a day on this, and none of these students have sued me for their vision loss. So we are good on that one. So here you can see, so these are not different mites from different bees, right? This is all the family that we could find on one bee sometimes. So you can see there is probably, this is the female mite, and this is an offspring that is having the sclerotized exoskeleton. These are the still immature stages that you are seeing. This is another image of almost developed bee that you can pull out, and you can see the entire mite family, right? You can see that's one that's there. This is another stages. So here is your answer that you are looking for. So average number of mites in capped brood cells in adults. So you can see inside the brood cells, that's the number of mites that we saw, 56%, and about 44% were on the bees. So again, this could vary depending on the time of the year, right? So I'm doing this in September in the valley here, Willamette Valley. So that's what we see. Maybe if I do this experiment in June, then the numbers might change as well. So it all depends on how much brood you have at that point of time. So again, the reason isn't to give you some magic numbers here, but make you understand that you're dealing with about 50% mites inside those cells all the time. And why would that be important? Let me see if we can move this thing from your page so you can see this well. So this is the take-home message. About 50% mites are in the brood cells, and then you have about 50% on. So when you use oxalic, or you use anything that doesn't stay in the hive for too long, right? So those type of products, when you use, and especially, you know, the experienced beekeepers in the audience, you probably know all that, but I'm just trying to make the new beekeepers think is, I know sometimes I get a question, beekeepers will ask the new beekeepers, I used oxalic acid in June as a vapor. So they have vaporized the crystals, and they think they have treated their hives, and probably they have dealt with most of the mites in the hive, right? But that's not true, because you killed only the bees, the mites that were on the bees, which in the phoretic phase. But if you don't apply again after a week or whatever your timeline is, then you're not dealing with all the mites in the hive, right? So that's a thing I want to tell, because if suppose, for example, you have your queen laying about 2,000 eggs in a day. So you have about 2,000 larvae, and just assuming I'm making up some numbers here, so I apologize if you are confused. So suppose 50% of the mites are there. So that means if you have 2,000 larvae, so I would expect 1,000 mites to be there. So probably there are 1,000 mites coming every day, right? Whenever your bees are hatching every day. So that will increase this number. So if you're treating only once with a temporary product, which is effective only for a day or two, then the mites that are emerging every day, they are not being taken care of, right? That's the reason why I'm showing you is you should always think about mites inside the cells as well, not just the mites on the bees. But if it's a long-term product, like if you're using APR strips, which is amitraz, that's probably you're keeping that for 6-7 weeks in the hive. So it's a slow release contact chemical. So you're probably still killing the mites that are coming every other day or day that are emerging. Same thing with formic. If you're using for 2 weeks or so, then probably you are killing most of the mites that are emerging at that time. So again, just to remind you that you should be thinking about mites inside those brood cells as well. Okay. Here is another question for you. How long can a mite survive? Have you ever thought about how long the mites survive? Any guesses?
Too long.
Too long, yeah. Very diplomatic answer. Any other ones? Okay. So it's hard to study mite life cycle, right? I mean, people have tried. Like, how do you know that this mite can survive this long? So you have to literally paint a mite and then see where it's going, and then you have to capture them again when they're out. Or so it's not that easy. So that's the reason we don't have too much information, but I think some studies were done maybe 20-30 years ago, and based on that I have seen only 1 or 2 papers on mite longevity. So we know at least have some understanding. So we think in an active season they might survive about 45 days. So again, this is a very variable answer for this question, because I'm talking about when they are really productively reproducing, right? They are vigorously reproducing. It goes into the cell, breeds, and then comes out, and then again gets into another cell after a few days. And so in that active season, like I would say anywhere between April and August for us here in the Pacific Northwest, I would say they're surviving about 45 days. But then think about the mites that were in November or December in your hives, right? They have to survive all the winter. So their lifespan is different. They probably will survive 4-5 months. If you live in Minnesota, probably even 5 to 6 months as well. So yeah, so there is you have to think about the answer here is if there's in a very active reproductive season, then they probably survive about 45 days. But if it's other time of the year like winter, they probably survive 5 months as well. Okay, here are some ways to look for mites in your hives, especially for the new beekeepers in the audience. We use alcohol wash. Probably it looks like a very knowledgeable group here. So you probably have heard from your group on how to test mites with alcohol wash, or if you hate killing bees, about 300 bees, then you probably want to go using sugar shake method, which is also effective, not as effective as alcohol wash, but we have done some comparisons for these all 4 methods few years ago, and looks like sugar shake is relevantly pretty close to alcohol wash, but not exactly. So so you can use sugar shake to get an idea. Sticky boards are not very reliable, but they'll give you a big picture of whether you have too many mites or not. But sticky boards have its own value if you're doing a study, like maybe you're using a miticide and want to see how many mites are dropping in 24 hours, 48 hours, you can use sticky boards. But these top 2 methods are the more reliable ones that you can use to look at mite levels in your hive. The reason I'm talking about mite sampling is really, really important. Without sampling, you will not know your mite levels and you'll be in the dark about treating your hives. Carbon dioxide method is another one that people have tried in the past. It's an okay method as well. So here I have a couple of strategies for you. I know nothing rocket science, as I said, but I'm just trying to make you think about these so that you can be more successful in controlling mites in the future. So frequent monitoring of mite levels from spring to late fall is really important. I know in books, if you read some textbooks, they'll talk about some calendar based, and probably some of you that have kept bees for about 20 years or so, this used to be a trend. People would remember, okay, so yes, we just passed Memorial Day. So people will tell you should do something about Memorial Day, these things in the hive, you do in Labor Day, this one. And so your mites and bees are not following your Labor Days or Memorial Days, right? So you have to look at their real population dynamics. That's why monitoring will give you a good sense of mites. So that's what I'm saying here. Instead of calendar-based Varroa treatment, we should focus on Varroa population dynamics-based treatment. That means by monitoring it frequently. I'm not saying like go into your hive every week and monitor. I'm saying at least month and a half, and especially during June on, I think you should be really paying attention to your hives. That's when the mites are exponentially increasing their populations, and you don't want to miss the opportunity to bring their populations down. Otherwise, they'll do a significant damage to your bees that are produced during fall and late fall, which is your diutinous bees, or that's a Latin term, but I think probably you heard of winter bees. They're not any magical bees. They're the same bees, same genetics, but their physiology is different because they are storing everything they are eating, like all the pollen, it's converting into fat bodies, and that's how they survive the winter. So the physiology of winter bees is different. So if you have a lot of varroa mites in your hives, they have compromised their physiology, and those bees will not survive the winter. I get this question often from new beekeepers. They'll say, I opened my hive in October. I had like probably 21 frames of bees in that hive. And by December, they were all dead. So physically, especially for new beekeepers, they will all look really good, right? Just looking at the bee doesn't mean that they are looking good. Their immune system has been compromised because of the varroa mites feeding on their fat bodies and transmitting viruses. Viruses are really, really lethal. They are the ones eventually that kill your bees. The deformed wing virus, there are a lot of paralytic viruses. So these will do the damage. That's why you want those winter bees to be raised in a good nutritional environment, and also varroa, not varroa free, but at least a minimal varroa environment where they can thrive best. So pay attention to this. Some years the brood rearing starts early. If we don't get too much rain in January, February, it's pretty dry. There are some resources available for bees in terms of pollen. Then those hives will start raising brood, right? So these mites are just waiting for that brood to be available to them so that they can start their reproduction. So if that's an earlier year, when I say early means it's not something early means something blooming early, but also that the weather has changed, then there are plants that are in bloom and your queen starts laying eggs sooner, then probably your mites are also going to increase sooner. So then your mite treatments have to go early. That's why the calendar dates are not reliable, because then it all depends on the brood cycle and also the row population dynamics. I'm repeating some of this here just to show you some images. So we have some YouTube videos as well, and you can just, you can find this information in many other websites too, but you can go to Oregon State University Honeybee Lab, and we have links for all these too. So there is alcohol wash. It gives you a percentage of mites. Sugar shake also gives you percentage of mites. Sticky boards, I told you that they are good for getting a broad sense of your mite levels, but they are not good for monitoring the levels of your mites at a certain point of time. Here is another strategy. Use combination of available mite control products. Try to avoid using the same product throughout the year, right? If you're very passionate about using oxalic, I would not suggest using oxalic 5-6 times. And I know there is no resistance at this point developed for oxalic. So you are still safe, but I would not recommend using oxalic around the year because it's working. Maybe it'll stop after some time because your mites may develop some resistance in the future. So always try to rotate. If you have, I know you may say as beekeeper, we don't have too many options, and that's correct. We don't have too many options like your big agriculture where you have so many insecticides to kill a pest. But beekeepers are probably at a disadvantage because we don't have too many products, especially synthetic products that are really working for our controlling our mites at this time. So here is an example that we have used in the past. So we use amitraz in spring, then formic acid during summer and fall, and then oxalic dribble during winter. Probably some of you have used oxalic dribble before you started using this strips with glycerine oxalic that people have been using for the last few years. But before that, oxalic dribble was very popular during winter, like November, December, when there is no brood, you can use that to get rid of those sporadic mites. And there is also now option of oxalic vapors that you can use around the year if you think you have mite levels like even in spring and summer as well. The label allows you to use when honey supers are on as well. So this is one, again, I'll go over this again in the next slide. This is important as well. Monitor mite levels after treatment. I know sometimes we use a treatment. It could be anything from oxalic, formic, amitraz, Epiguard, whatever you use. I would recommend you look at mite levels after the treatment. When I say after means like not next day. So if you use something probably today, and then I want you to go back after 3 weeks or 4 weeks and look at the mite levels again. Even commercial beekeepers, sometimes they can't do that because they have too many hives and they're busy with a lot of pollination contracts going from one crop to the other. They have 5,000-10,000 hives, so they can't really do after treatment monitoring. But this is really important because you lose that window of time, right? If suppose a product for some reason didn't work, maybe it was a product, like suppose you are using Amitraz, the strips, and maybe the stock was old or something went wrong. Maybe the placement of the strips was wrong. And then if it didn't work, then you lose that time because the damage has been done, because the mite levels have gone so much that now they're transmitting viruses and they are compromising the physiology of your bee. So that's the reason you don't want to waste much time. So if you just put something in and think you are fine for 2 months, and then you go back and look after 2 months, probably there is a huge damage done by these mites. So that's why I suggest at least monitor for mites after treatment as well, so that it tells you if your product has worked or not. And I don't know if you have heard about mite migration, right? For the new beekeepers, you might be thinking, oh, mites don't have wings, how do they migrate, right? So they migrate when bees are going into other hives, either for robbing some honey or nectar from other hives, or they are accidentally drifting into a neighboring hive. And sometimes we don't think about this mechanism. Sometimes the mites can drop on the flower. Suppose I have a hive and you have a hive, and you are mite free and my hives had significant populations of mites. And if some of my foragers are flying in a patch of flowers, and some of those mites will dislodge and fall onto the flower, and one of your worker bees comes in contact with that mite, it'll latch onto that mite to bee, and then you need just one female to get enough populations raised in your hive in the future. So there is a way how bees will transfer mites between colonies, and so that's called mite migration. And sometimes we tend to ignore that. We think it's not a big deal, but there are some studies that have shown it could be anywhere between 20 to 50% mite transfer, or percentage of transfer of mites into other hives. So this is a quick study that I'm gonna show you just to document that mite migration is a problem, because I want you to treat all your hives in one apiary, not leave some of these thinking that their levels are still low, so maybe they're not a problem. So here, this is a study we did in Central Oregon, a place called Madras, where there is a lot of hybrid carrot seed production, about 4,000 to 5,000 acres. They boast that they produce 70% of hybrid carrot seed for the United States in Central Oregon, place called Madras. So the reason we chose that location is because about 15,000 hives will come from some California beekeepers, a couple of Washington beekeepers come as well, and mostly Oregon beekeepers will be there too. So we chose locations, we call them low bee density and high bee density locations. So when I say high bee density, means there is a beekeeper just across the road. So there are too many hives pollinating carrot seed in that area. And when I say low bee density, so there is no other beekeeper for at least a 2-mile radius. So that's low bee density. And we choose the same beekeepers, right? I can't compare 2 different beekeepers for this study. So if a beekeeper goes to low bee density area, the same beekeeper will also go to high bee density area. And then we compare between those 2. So that's a pair. So we had about 7 beekeepers in this study. So each one had one location with a low bee density and high bee density. So you can see here in early July, when the carrot seed blooms, the bees come in, and we look at their percentage mites, 1.3. Late July, when they're leaving, to about 3 to 4 weeks, 1.4%. High bee density locations, the numbers jump almost twice, right? You had 0.5% initially, and then they go into 1.1. So there is no way the mites have changed their biology within that period of time, right? Their biology is still the same. They take the same time to mature and produce babies. So the only thing you can expect here that is a big variable that is resulting in this high mite levels is the mite migration, because of these high density locations where bees are in close proximity. There might be a lot of robbing. They're getting some mites when they are exposed to those flowers when they are foraging. So there are different ways how mites can. So here are some options, and I know You probably have used more of many of these products before, and so APVAR is the Imitraz. That's a synthetic product available that still works. Some of you may disagree, and we have seen reports where people are not happy with the Imitraz efficacy at this time, but I think still it just does give you some control. It's not like we have seen a huge resistance developed against this product by mites. There is Formic Pro, which is a formic acid product. APGuard is thymol, and of course you all know oxalic acid, either you use as a vapor or a dribble, or some of you probably are using as strips with that oxalic glycerin method, which has been popular in the last few years. But again, that's still not a legal application because the EPA has not registered that formulation yet. So I'll talk about a product that probably is going to come soon, which you can probably try. So I mentioned this, like this has worked for us. Again, you live in a different location than where we are, but you can try some of this if it works for you. APVAR works very well in spring because your mite levels are still low, and it's a contact chemical, right? You put 2 strips in the brood area. Placement is really important for the new beekeepers. You can't just put somewhere on the corners, or so it has to be close to the brood area because it's a contact chemical. Your bees have to contact the strips, get the chemical on their bodies, and then it gets to the mites. So sometimes I've seen new beekeepers, they probably haven't read the label properly. So they may stick it on the top box where there is not much brood. And then they will see that the mite product is not working. So placement of product is important. But again, a lot of commercial beekeepers use in spring because they think the mite levels are low and this chemical is more effective at that time. I'm not saying that it will not work in fall. It works in fall as well, but the efficacy may not be as great because you have too many mites in fall. And it's a slow release chemical, 3.3% Imitraz. Formic acid, some beekeepers are using 1 pad applications. It's a 20-day duration, right? You put 1 pad for 10 days, remove it, put another one, replace it, right, with the next one. So that way, I know formic is sometimes pretty toxic as well. So you probably have to use the respirator or whatever the recommendation is. Please be careful. I think your health is more important than bees. So don't ignore when you use formic or oxalic acid as a vapor, you have to use something to protect yourself. So Formic Pro 1 pad application twice. I think this has worked for commercial beekeepers as well. I see a lot of Oregon beekeepers using Formic Pro. If you want a Formic Pro, this is also another method to apply for 14 days. This is 2 pads go at the same time. So sometimes it might be too much fumes inside the hive. So sometimes you may see bees bearding out, and so that might be a hassle. And sometimes the queen is in disarray as well. So she may run around and hide somewhere farther from those strips to avoid those vapors coming from the formic acid product. And that will disrupt the egg laying. So we see that there is a brood break because the queen is not laying eggs for the next 3-4 days because the bees were not feeding her. I think that's the hypothesis we have, is why queen stops laying eggs for some time after you use a high dose of like 2 pads application of formic is because a queen is always fed several times in a day. The protein that is being produced from those hypopharyngeal glands and mandibular glands, right? So when you don't feed your queen, and because the queen is hiding somewhere because of the vapors, the bees are all bearding out, then they're not feeding, then the ovaries may shrink because the queen is not being fed well. And that will impact her egg laying rate in the next few days. And that's why we see less eggs or no eggs for the next few days. So we do APVAR follow-up in fall as well. And then we do oxalic dribble in the winter, like November, December, when there is no brood. The dribble is toxic to larvae, and that's the reason why we don't suggest using oxalic dribble when there is enough brood inside your hive. I'll talk about this and I'll stop if you have any questions to see if you have any burning questions I can answer after this. So stay tuned for these products here. I don't know if you have heard of Amiflex, which is again an Amitraz product like that APVAR that I talked about, but it's a flash treatment. So because probably you know, if you have been in the beekeeping business for a while, commercial beekeepers have used this Amitraz, an off-label compound, not the registered product, but they get something to kill ticks in cattle. So there is a formulation called Tactic. So some people have used in the past, they put the shop towels, they wet them with Tactic, put on top bars, and then remove them after some time, or just leave the bees to remove the towel. So it's a very quick flash application, and it does kill mites. But then they use their own formulation, different doses, and which has also created a lot of problem. Probably that's gonna result in resistance against this chemical. So people are worried about that. But that's a different story. But what I'm giving you that background is, so this company itself was thinking that let's do a flash treatment. So you see this, they provide you this gun with the compound in, and then you can put like those strips like that there. It's a gel formulation type. But unfortunately, you need a pesticide applicator license to apply this. So you probably, as a backyard beekeeper, if you don't have a license, probably it's not worth trying this. But just I'm giving you more information that something like this product is available as well for a flash treatment. But this looks more promising here. Again, I have not tested this product, probably is not available yet in the market, but stay tuned. Maybe they'll start selling this soon. It's called Varoxan, Varroxsan. It's an oxalic acid slow release. Same thing like you are using glycerin or something like that right now. So these strips are, I think they're made of some fiber, and they're impregnated with this oxalic acid. And they go like, you can fold and put it in the brood area. I don't know exactly how long. Maybe you should Google for this and find the label. It's registered. EPA has provided registration for this, but the product is not being sold yet in the United States. I think this company is in Europe. The same one that makes those Vita kits for EFB and AFB testing kits, if you have used in the past. So the same company makes these, and hopefully they'll start selling this in the next few months. We'll see. Okay, I'll stop here and take questions, and then I will continue with the oxalic acid studies that we did in the last 3 or 4 weeks. If you want me to continue, I can continue and ask questions at the end. But if you have anything really pressing at this point or wasn't clear, I can answer now.
We're saying, it looks like Betterby already has Roxanne on the website, and it's going to be for sale this summer. It's not for sale yet, but it's.
And they're in the notification list if anyone's particularly on them.
Did you guys hear that?
No, someone has to repeat, getting a little close to the mic. I heard something about Varoxan, but the availability in the market or something, but I couldn't get the exact.
Betterby already has it listed on their website, and there's a spot for notification, and they say it should be available for sale this summer.
Oh yeah, cool. Yeah, so that's what I meant is, yeah. So stay tuned. I heard some good things about. I think I don't know which university, but someone has tested the product, and they think it has promise. So I don't know how expensive it is, but you could try. And the one product comes, I think we will test here at OSU as well and see if it's worth for the beekeepers to use. Any other questions?
I may be missing phone, probably am, but at some point in time, I got the notion that if you left your bees with comb out in the weather and froze, we kill off the mites. Is that true? And if so, wonderful. And if it isn't true, do I have mites in the swarms that I have captured this spring?
Can you use the mic and repeat? I know I heard half of it.
Repeat the question.
Yeah, I heard something about bearding, and then you said something about, but yeah, I couldn't catch
The impression from where I got it, I don't know, but if you left your colonies with wax and honey out in the weather to freeze, that would kill the mice for the winter. Is that true? And if so, the swarms that I've captured this spring, do they have mites that came from this area?
So I understood the swarm question, but the previous one you said like you remove the bees and then leave them in the open and then the mites will die. Is that the question?
Is that true?
Yeah.
Like you open the hive and then just leave them in the open, like in the sun, or what's the?
I just recently captured the hive, the colonies, feral colonies. And I haven't done anything to check on anything other than just simply get it in the box and move from one place to another.
Were you asking about mites living in the equipment over the winter that
Yes.
aren't
Thank you
bees?
for clarifying, Chris.
Okay, so the question is around, one question is, do the mites live in comb and that do not have bees in it?
No, they no.
Over
The mites will have to have the bees. Without a bee, the mite will die. Max I have seen to survive is 2 days. They can't survive more than that. So we have tested some in the lab as well. Without a larva or a bee, adult bee, they will not survive. They are very well adapted with the bee biology. So without a honeybee as a food source, they will not survive more than 2 days.
Your second question of if you caught a swarm, does it have mites? The answer is probably yes. It was scary.
Yeah, so the question was if the swarms have mites, is that the question?
Yes, that was the second
Yeah.
question.
So swarms, so in nature, yeah, when they swarm, half of the bees are going along with your old queen, right? So they will carry mites along with them as well. So that's a mechanism why we say like we have domesticated bee and we have impeded with the biology as well, right? We have screwed up the bee biology. That's not a right term to use, but so we keep giving them more space and more space. In nature, if there is a beehive in a tree or hollow or somewhere in a cavity, they only have a minimal space that they need, and then after that they will swarm, right? So half of the bees will go away with the queen, the old queen, and so they will have mites, but the ones that are existing also will have mites, but then there is a brood break as well, right? The new queen that they have produced will not be able to lay eggs at least for another 2 weeks or so. So then they have a brood break. So that's good for the hive. So half of the mites have gone. Even the mites that are back with the swarm, they will not get a leg up because now they have to build a comb. Then by the time the queen lays an egg, there is still a lot of time, right? So that's how the swarming biology also helps your bees. That's how in nature they have evolved to get rid of mites and other pests and pathogens as well, not just varroa mites. So it's a beautiful biology that the bees have. But yeah, coming back to your question, yeah, the swarms will also have mites. Don't expect 0 mites on them.
Sorry, it was just a can
Can you please use the mic again? I think if you are farther from the mic, I can't hear you.
Apologize. No question.
No questions. Okay. I will go over the oxalic and then I'll leave enough time at the end for you to ask more questions. Yeah. So we have been looking at oxalic because this has become a little more popular and there are more beekeepers using oxalic. I know oxalic has been there for a while. People have been using as dribble, not so much as vapor, but the vaporization has picked up in the last 5 years in a big way. So here are some questions for you that beekeepers always ask. Is 1 gram, so this is the label dose, right? Maybe you're laughing, some of you that have used as a vapor. Oh, 1 gram is too low, it doesn't work. So that's my question is, but this is the label dose. If you read the label, if you have bought oxalic from Man Lake or wherever you buy Better Bee or wherever, so 1 gram per brood chamber. So you have 2 boxes with brood, that means 2 grams, right? So that's a dose. I'm asking you, is that dose adequate? Does it provide you adequate control of mites? And then the other question you probably have pondered on is how many times can OA be used to get better control and not damage your larva or the queen? So that's another question you have here at the bottom. So to address some of those, we did at least 4 studies in 2019 and then 2021 and 2022. So I'll focus more on this 2022 study today, just because of the time factor. So 2019, we looked at the larval mortality. So we wanted to see if that 1 gram dose, the label dose, has any impact on the larva. And then in 2021, we tested the doses for efficacy. That means to see whether mite control is happening or not with 1 gram per brood chamber, 2 grams per brood chamber, and 4 grams per brood chamber. So if you have 2-story hive with brood, then that would be 8 grams, right, for this 4 gram dose. So in this study, what we found is 1 gram and 2 grams were not very effective. So we saw 4 gram to be very effective, but then we also saw some higher mortality of brood. So the next year we used 4 grams because we knew it was very effective in controlling mites. But then we also thought that 3 grams might be a more of a balanced diet, or at least a sweet spot where we may not see too much mortality of larva, but it may still give you the same control as 4 grams. That's the reason we tested 3 and 4 grams in 2022. So here is the 2022 oxalic study. So we used 3 and 4 grams per brood chamber, 3 applications, 1 week apart. These are few parameters that we measured. So of course, mite infestation is the most important one. You need to look at whether the mite control is happening or not. So we used alcohol wash, and the sticky board was used to see how many mites drop in a day. That's the reason why sticky boards were used. Colony evaluations, we looked at number of bees and how more amount of brood in that colony or colonies. Worker bees sample to look at oxidative stress because we wanted to see if bees have some sort of a physiological stress because of oxalic acid vapors. We wanted to see also if it damages any appendages. Again, this is still pending. We haven't found time to do this, but I'll talk about these and the queens part a little bit. And we also collected all the queens after the study to see if there was anything wrong with their sperm viability and other reproductive parameters. So here is the study design. You can see we are used. So to burn like that much amount, sometimes you have to use 2 of those. Again, this is a study. I'm not recommending you to use 2 of those devices at the same time. So this is something called Varrox, and we use this device because many beekeepers, at least the backyard beekeepers, use something similar to this device where your oxalic goes here and then you put it inside with the battery, heat it up, and then we put these wet towels at the front so that the bees are not coming out and the vapors stay in at least for 10 minutes. And we seal all the holes, the auger holes, if you have any cracks on your hives. So you have to seal all those so that the vapors stay in there for at least 10 minutes. This is a video if you want to get a good sense of how this works. You can still see some vapors coming out. So first I'm going to show you some of those 24, 48-hour drops with the sticky board that we monitor. So here you can see after 24 hours, you're getting about 1400 plus mites dropped in that 4 gram dose, the highest dose that we used per brood chamber. Here is your 3 gram in green. You're dropping about 800 mites, and then this is your control. So the control also still get the wand, right? We are not just not disturbing the hive, because that's how experiments are done, is mostly you have to do everything to this hive that is control as well, except that they don't get the product oxalic. But you still put the wand and burn the empty one to have the same disturbance that you do for this group of hives as well. So you can see, so the mites are still dropping after 48 hours. This is what you see, not as much as this drop, but you still see about 400 mites in the 4 gram dose, 200 in that, and not much on this. So, but by 72 hours, you don't see much. They're all pretty much close to each other. So looks like if you are ever wondering how long because people ask always, how long does oxalic vapor stay in the hive, or at least recrystallize on the comb or on the bees, and how long it's effective. So it looks like you will get the major drop after 24 hours, and maybe after 48 hours, you're still seeing some more drop as well. But after that, the product is totally gone from the hive. Again, I'm showing you one more because we applied 3 times, right? This is after the 3rd one. You still see about 2000 plus mites still dropping after 24 hours with the 4 gram. This is your 3 gram. This is your control. So for the new beekeepers in the audience, so that's what I was mentioning, right? The reproductive phase that I showed you, there are mites always inside the cells that you have to think about as well. If suppose if I was using this right here, So after a week, my mites dropped, and you may think, oh, now we are all good to go. I don't need any more mite treatments because the mites are gone. So this is what it tells you, right? So after a third also, you're still dropping mites more now even. So that tells you that there are new mites coming every day that are emerging out of those cells, and you need to deal with those as well. So here is a graph to show you the larval mortality. So this is your control, the yellow one. The red one is 3 grams, 4 grams. So this is, they are all statistically not different when we started the experiment, but you can see after second check when we were doing on, after about 14 days, 2 weeks, you can see there is more damage to the larva in the 4 gram oxalic dose. So here is a take-home message from those studies. Of course, you already know that 1 gram is not the right dose that is on the label. So hopefully the studies that we are publishing now, and some have come from University of Florida and other places like University of Georgia as well, hopefully those will at least stimulate EPA to change the label dose, and it might increase. But at least for now, the label dose still says 1 grams. So the first study we did, 1 gram appears to be safe to your bees, but it's not adequate for controlling mites. So based on our studies, 3 grams oxalic appears to be the effective and relatively safe dose for larvae and bees. So one thing is pretty much unknown, and I get a lot of questions about this, is if you're using these wands and vaporizing, is it more effective only on the lower chamber? You get more control and vapors don't go all the way top. So we have designed something like a glass hive that I'm showing you here. So we'll be looking into this in a more serious way in the next year or so. So we'll vaporize the product and see how much crystallizes or recrystallizes on the comb, on the lower box versus the top box, how much on the bee. So we're trying to see and understand the chemistry of this vaporization of oxalic as well, if someone is using oxalic as a vapor. Yeah, this is the last study, and then after that I'll stop. So Amitraz, again, I don't know how many of you still use Amitraz or APR strips in your hives, but there is at least some documentation from commercial beekeepers that the product is not as effective as it used to be a few years ago. So we wanted to test this resistance problem in the field. So in the field, we were looking at the efficacy of Amitraz, and then we did a bioassay in the lab to look at the resistance problem. So again, we didn't, so we have a Oregon State beekeepers and Oregon State University. We have collaboratively developed a master beekeeper program, which is popular, and I have seen some Washington beekeepers also join our program. And I think your state is developing a new one there. Hopefully in the next few years, you may have a good one there too. So these are some of these students are the master level students. So we provide them an opportunity to help with research as well whenever possible. So this is one of my research assistants, Carolyn, and you see Dewey Kiran, probably many of you probably heard him speak to your groups as well. So he came as well because he helps us with the Master Beekeeper program here in Oregon. So this is how we do the field testing. So bees will be put inside those plastic cups. So there is a APR strip hanging there on the top. So the bees are congregating around that, and they are exposed for 3 hours. And you see these yellow sticky traps here. So there is a mesh here. So the whatever mites are dying in the 3 hour period, they will drop onto the sticky traps, and then we come up with the mortality. So in 2023, I'm not going to show you results because 3 hour was not enough, because one publication from USDA Baton Rouge, no, University of, not Baton Rouge, I think the Florida USDA, they have a study where they use for 3 hours, and they have shown it's pretty effective, and within you get something 90% mortality, but we were not getting that numbers. We were getting somewhere like 40-50%. So we are going to repeat this study this summer to see if we can increase the monitoring protocol to 6 hours to see if we have any resistance issues or not. So stay tuned. If I speak to your group again sometime, then I'll give you more data on this one. But this is the one which we are really excited about. It's called the vial bioassay. So we get those mites that are susceptible. So this USDA lab in Florida, they have something they call susceptible mites because they have not used amitraz for more than 10 years in their hives. And they think those mites are very susceptible to amitraz. So we wanted to use those to compare with mites that we have here in Oregon. So here you see, so we started shipping those mites here, right? Probably you will be laughing, how do you ship mites? So we asked the researcher there, Dr. Frank Rinkovic, who is a USDA scientist in Florida. So this send us the susceptible mites. So they will extract mites. They will use the powdered sugar on those bees. They'll shake them hard. The mites fall. And then they will collect all those mites and put them on some fresh bees. And then those bees will go into this queen shipping cages. So the mites will arrive on the bees. And then here you see Carolyn again shaking in our lab those mites back with sugar. And then those mites will be cleaned with a drop of water, and then they will go into these vials. So you can see we have different concentrations of amitraz. So this is a hot dog roller where we put those vials so that they're coated well with the concentrations we want for the amitraz. And then we give them a pupa. I don't know if you can see a pupa inside those cells, in the vial, and those mites. Because you can't keep those mites alive, as I said before. The mites will die very quickly sometimes of starvation. So we provide a pupa as well so that they are not dying because of starvation. And we want them to die because of the concentrations of amitraz we have coated in these vials. So we have different concentration of vials. So we got very good data. So looks like we have some issue with resistance. Those susceptible mites from Florida, they died pretty quickly when compared to the mites that we have here in commercial beekeeper hives in Oregon. So again, we need to repeat this before we publish. So again, the plan is to repeat this year. So again, just to give you a very broad sense, looks like, yeah, we do have some issue here, but we don't know how bad the resistance issue is. So stay tuned and I'll be able to provide more information. Okay, I think I'll stop here with my dog pictures here and take any questions that you may have. Thank you very much.
I like your dog.
Oh, you got your dog too, yeah.
Yeah, this is my baby.
How old is she?
I'm 7.
Oh, exactly. Okay, my dog will be 6 soon in June. So
his name is Butter, and he got stung once, and now he doesn't go anywhere close to the apiary. He
okay.
learned his lesson.
Yeah, the picture I have is it was a low season, like the bees were not that active at the time. That's why the dog was brave enough to stand next to the hives. Okay, questions? Yeah, go ahead. Please use the mic if you're in the audience. It's a little hard for me to hear.
I'm gonna try to get just close enough here. Am I audible if I talk like this?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Yeah.
Okay. So I have a question about the oxalic acid vaporization rates. With the 3 grams being what you have seen as being the effective rate at this point. I've heard similar things from other people as well. I'm curious whether you have a sense or opinion as to whether the label dosage was just always wrong in the testing. I don't know what happened, or if the mites possibly are actually already showing some resistance developing or something else.
Yeah. Oh, great question. Yeah. So even I am puzzled. I haven't spoken to EPA how they arrived at that 1 gram. I thought they were looking at some studies from Europe because oxalic vapor was not that. I mean, we were using it, but then there were no real good studies in the United States at the time when they got this dose. So I'm also puzzled how EPA arrived at that 1 gram dose. So again, this is all my personal opinion is I thought to start with, they started with the wrong dose. So I thought they should have done more studies to come up with the right dose, like what we have done or University of Florida or other places people have tested. So again, that's just my opinion. I haven't spoken to EPA or anyone from EPA about how they came up with this label dose, but that may, I don't think we have any resistance issues as far as I understand at this point for oxalic.
Thank you very much.
And that's 3 grams per brood box?
Yeah, 3 grams. Again, that's why I was trying to repeat that. I know it's confusing when we just talk about that, right? So all that I said is 3 grams per brood chamber. So if you have 2 brood chambers, that's 6 grams.
Maybe from deeps.
Yeah.
Can you talk about using ApiGuard in the fall and whether you think it's very effective?
Yeah. So we did some studies on ApiGuard. These were like almost 10 years ago. That's why I wasn't showing you too many, but ApiGuard is a nice product, especially for those new in the audience. It's a thymol product, and these are all temperature sensitive, right? So you have to be careful what temperatures you use. So if I have seen if it's too hot, I'll give you one trick. So what we used is if you have 2-story hive, so we use those spacers, right? You have those 2-inch spacers, because the bees have to have some space to really work on that product. Sometimes they may ignore if it's totally pressed between your boxes. It's hard for them to remove. So the best results we got, we had different combinations. The best result came when the product was applied in the middle with the boxes, 1 box on top and 1 on the bottom, and the middle is your spacer. And it's pretty effective. I think we used maybe even in July. But again, temperature sensitive, so you have to be careful. If it's too hot, like more than 90, probably I would not suggest using at that time. But if you're in 80s, I think you're still okay. But it's a very effective product. We have gotten probably 92, 93% control with ApiGuard.
Do you think it works very well at lower temperatures? Because I like to use it in the fall, like
Yeah.
in September, October, after I take my
Yeah,
supers
I
off.
think, yeah, even 70s is fine, but I think probably not if it's getting into 60s. But again, read the label. I think they have a range, but I think 70s also should be fine, but not like in 60s probably, because it has to vaporize, right? If it's not
Right.
vaporizing, then it's all these products that are supposed to become vapors and vaporize to some degree, they may not be very effective if temperatures are low.
Thank you.
Other questions?
Do you always do one treatment at a time, or do you ever double up on methods?
For oxalic?
Any of them?
So when you say 1 at a time means like use what I'm understanding is maybe use APR and oxalic at the same time?
Yeah.
No, we haven't done that. I know this is something more popular in the big ag where sometimes they'll mix 2 different compounds at the same time and use. Just because honeybees are sensitive, right? You have to think about that as well. We always use chemicals in the hive, but then don't think like everything what we use in the hive is safe to bees. It's not. Sometimes you don't know the impact of 2 chemicals at the same time, the synergistic or additive effects and all. So honeybee being a very sensitive insect, we don't want you to use 2 compounds at the same time, because that might be a lot of physiological stress on the bees as well. Not maybe you may get a better mite control, but I don't think that would balance your loss of bees as well. So I think that's one major reason why the bee community, we don't suggest to use any compounds together. But that's a great point to think about.
I have a question about brood breaks. You mentioned how smaller cavities, more often swarming, is kind of nature's way to kind of shed the pests. Is that effective with the larger colonies we like to run?
Yeah, that's a good question. A brood break, I know there are at least few studies I have seen. They do with oxalic. They have done intentionally caging the queen to create a brood break as well. It's a lot of work, right? But as a backyard beekeeper, you have the luxury to do that. And but do the brood break only when you think is reasonable, right? You don't want to stop the colony growth when you really need that population to grow up. But if you think at some point where there is enough bees and you have the luxury that, and so you need to understand your mite population dynamics and your bee growth as well. If you are really adept at that, then I may not be damaging this colony by slowing it down, because if they are whenever there is nectar flow, you don't want to do that, right? Your bees have to come with a lot of resources and grow. But you have to find that sweet spot when you think you can cage your queen for maybe a few days, 4 or 5 days, and then that's enough for you. And then you have to hit them with something that kills most of the phoretic mites. Then probably you are in. So it has to be done not just with one brood break. You may get some good control, but then if you're not hitting them with that oxalic or something that can get rid of phoretic mites, then probably there is not much benefit to avoiding the brood or creating that brood break. But if just to answer in a simple way your question, yeah, brood breaks can reduce your mite population, but then if you really want to be a very effective control of mites as well, then you have to plan some treatment when that brood break happens.
Thank you.
Have you come across any studies on the miticide flumethrin? I was given some to use as a mite treatment. I feel like it killed my bees.
Yeah, so flumethrin, the problem is we don't have much data to support that it's controlling mites at this time. So you said like you used it, but the bees were all killed because of flumethrin?
There, I used it and there was a big die-off. Like I basically kept the strips in for a few hours and noticed bees were dying, and so I took them out, and there was probably a couple thousand bees dead within that day.
So I'm trying to understand, where did you get the product? Like, was someone selling you, or you just got
Yeah,
from a friend?
From another beekeeper, yeah.
But as far as I understand, flumethrin, you can get it from the bee stores at this point, right?
Yeah, I think it's sold under, I can't remember the name, but yeah, there's a name it's sold under.
And it's you can use it for bees. Or I know flumethrin has been still used in South America in some countries, I guess. But I think the reason why we have not used that is maybe at some point there was a resistance that was developed against mites. So that's the reason why that product is not here in the market for use for mites and bees. But I don't know what happened. Maybe, what do you think the dose was right, or I have no idea what might have happened.
Yeah, I don't. I followed the instructions, and the guy I got it from says he's never had a problem. But it's the only thing I think of that would have killed the bees that fast.
Yeah, flumethrin can be toxic. Yeah, I mean that's what I'm asking about the dose. If the dose is high, it could be impacting bees to some degree as well. But yeah, the mites, the reason why United States we don't have a registration for that for mites is because of development of resistance in the past.
I see. Thank you.
Yeah, but email me. I'll try to find more information on that.
Okay, thank you.
Someone was saying something in the audience about flumethrin.
Question outside acid shapers. How important is it to treat before or leave the time in the morning?
Can you please get the mic closer? Yeah, sorry to make you walk, but it's more clear if you use a mic.
How important is it to treat with oxalic acid vapors early in the morning before foragers leave the hive?
Okay, that's a great question. So we haven't really thought about that. For the experiments, we probably used around 9 a.m. or so. But yeah, that's important question. I think foragers will have mites, right? So maybe not as many as in the brood area. With your nurse bees will have more. But yeah, that's a great point. If you think you have the luxury of using it early, then yeah, you'll be having a better coverage, right? Because you're getting probably most of your bees. Whereas if you're doing at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, probably 30% of your bees are out. So yeah, that's a great point. So again, I haven't seen any studies to really document that, but speaking logically, yeah, I think you may have a better control if you are using it sooner in the morning than doing later in the day.
We're in a day like today.
Gloomy.
How many of you use oxalic glycerin in your group? Can you raise your hands? I think I can see the audience there. Yeah. So you make your own at home?
All fixed in one. All, you know,
The shop towels. You're talking about the shop towels?
Yeah, I mean, like even the mixing of glycerin and oxalic and then putting and whatever the mode is. Are you following what Randy Oliver has been publishing or?
It's mine.
I make those.
And are you happy with those? Are they, you think they're working?
I think they seem to work pretty well.
Okay.
Yeah, I had much better winter effectiveness than summer effectiveness with them, but they definitely did help. They won't eliminate during the summer, but they keep the curve down.
Okay. Yeah, good to know. Yeah, we haven't tested any glycerin thing because I mean, usually we as researchers, we do only products that are legally available. I know it's still oxalic, but that formulation is not registered by EPA yet. So, so that we are only testing that's probably is authorized by EPA at this point. I'm glad at least it's working, but I know it's still not a label dose usage of that product yet. Other questions?
Thank you very much.
Yeah, take care and yeah, good luck with your bees this year. And yeah, and if you have any other questions that you missed, maybe feel free to email me. You can just Google for my last name, Sagili, Sagili, or Ramesh is my first name. And yeah, send me an email at Oregon State. So it's ramesh.sagili@oregonstate.edu is my email. And I'll be happy to answer any questions you may.
Thank you.
Okay.
That was amazing.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you very much. That was
Take
fantastic.
care.
Thank you.
Night, everybody.
Okay, before y'all take off, I was just looking at a table a few minutes ago, and there's a bunch of stuff there that have not been bid on, and the minimum bid is 0. So I think that smokers, competitive item there, bid up to $1. Oh, wow. Yeah, I can take a look there, get your bid.